Discover the incredible hope hidden in humanity after WW3, 5 life-changing truths revealed. In the fading heart of Maplewood, Tom Anderson's calloused hands gripped a wrench like a lifeline. At 35, he was a mechanic with a steadfast American work ethic, raised on the belief that hard work could mend anything broken. As the shadows of World War III loomed over the town, the vibrancy of their Friday night football games had dimmed to a distant memory. Tom could feel the weight of it all, pressing against his chest. It wasn't just the town crumbling around him, it was his family, his sister Emily, who vanished into the city seeking dreams that felt like relics of the past. Every day, he toiled in a workshop surrounded by rusted engines, missing parts, and ghosts of laughter. The elderly couple who would drop by to share stories about their son lost to the war were now reduced to a whisper of themselves, gripped by grief. In the backdrop, autumn leaves scattered aimlessly, paralleling the families that had drifted apart in a town struggling to stitch itself back together. Yet amidst the ruins, resilience pulsed like a heartbeat, echoing through the crumbling community center where neighbors gathered, determined to breathe life into their beloved Maplewood once more. Then, a storm descended, a monstrous force, wind howling like a million lost souls, rain battering against the fragile walls of their dreams. Panic seized the gathering at the community center. Tom felt it in the air, thick and suffocating. It didn't take long for tension to ignite. Some whispered about pursuing individual ambitions, while others clenched fists, rallying for unity. The murmur turned into an uproar, igniting Tom's frustration. How could they debate dreams when there was a storm to face? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the storm raged, Tom's heart raced with an old pain that couldn't be ignored. There, in the darkened silence of the building's corners, he sensed Emily's presence. Their argument spiraled into a confrontation amidst the chaos, voices blending with the howling winds outside. He unleashed years of hurt, bitterness coloring every word, while she fought back with fierce resolve. In the rawness of their exchange, buried love surfaced, threatening to drown them both. But just when Tom thought clarity was within reach, a revelation struck like lightning. Emily's journey wasn't about abandoning Maplewood, it was an escape from their shared grief, a quest to outdistance the shadows. The disdain that had held Tom captive for so long began to unravel. Hope flickered in the air, an ember waiting to ignite something powerful. With the storm rampaging fiercely, the ultimate question lingered in the fabric of each breath: could they find the strength to stop fighting and start forgiving, to bridge the chasm wrought by pain and time? Outside, as chaos reigned, the flicker of understanding sparked an undeniable connection between them, leaving Maplewood's fate hanging in the balance. Would they embrace the healing or remain tethered to the past? The storm roared on, echoing the uncertainty in their hearts, urging them toward a decision that could change everything. Tom stood frozen, the storm outside howling with an intensity that matched the turmoil within. Emily's eyes blazed with a fierce determination that both scared and captivated him. Rain lashed against the windows, each drop loud enough to drown out the whispers of doubt that echoed in his mind. "Tom, you need to understand," she pleaded, her voice strained but steady. "I didn't leave because I wanted to forget. I left to find a way back to us, to Maplewood. But I can't do it alone. I need you." Every word was like a tug on his heart, pulling him closer to a painful truth he had avoided for too long. Was he really pushing her away because he wanted to keep her safe? Or was it simply fear masquerading as protection? "You could have stayed," he countered, bitterness creeping back into his voice. "You chose the city. You chose dreams over family. I chose hope, Tom. I chose to fight for a future that could still be ours." Her fist slammed against the table, shaking it violently. "You think I wanted to leave you here alone? I thought you'd see me as someone strong enough to contribute, not someone running away. The truth of her words hung in the air like fog, enveloping him, chilling him to the bone. Was he really so trapped in his own grief that he had failed to notice Emily's own struggles? He could see the sincerity in her eyes now, the fear of not being enough playing a silent but powerful role in her life. With a heavy sigh, he dropped onto a nearby chair, the wood creaking beneath him as he closed his eyes. I don't want to lose you again, he whispered, the fight leaving his body. This town, it's so broken. There's still hope, Tom, Emily said, sitting beside him now. Not just for me. For all of us. If we can just find a way to work together. The storm outside seemed to pause, a lull in the howling winds echoing Tom's racing thoughts about togetherness and rebuilding. The images of laughter and camaraderie in their childhood flooded his mind, memories of a simpler time before war turned their lives upside down. Maybe they could find that again. But what if the storm inside us is worse than what's outside? He asked, vulnerability creeping in. She placed a gentle hand on his arm, her touch grounding him. That's a choice we have to make. To face whatever demons we have together. In the silence that followed, the wind began to die down, replaced by the rhythm of raindrops against the roof, like a heartbeat. They sat together, lost in thought, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. Then, from the back of the community center, a voice broke the tension. Hey! We need to figure out a plan. We can't let this storm tear us apart even more. It was Mark, one of their old friends, emerging from the shadows of the crowd. His expression was resolute, the bravery of a man who had seen too much but refused to give in. Others began to look up, attention shifting from their quarrels to the reality of their circumstances. The storm may have unleashed chaos, but it also prompted a reckoning. Tom and Emily exchanged a glance filled with new purpose. Let us show them, he nodded, feeling a surge of camaraderie. As they stood up together, the beginnings of a plan forming as the realization of their own potential settled in, a voice echoed in Tom's mind. What if this storm was just the beginning? Would they really come together, or were they setting themselves up for another profound heartbreak? The questions lingered, heavy in the air as they joined the others, each heartbeat laying the groundwork for a story yet to unfold. Would they be able to turn their shared wounds into a foundation of strength for Maplewood? Or would the past still hold the reins? Tom felt the energy in the room shift as he and Emily merged with the crowd. Mark stood at the front, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, urgency and determination etched across his face. The old community center, battered by years of neglect, suddenly felt alive with possibility. Listen up, everyone. Mark's voice boomed, drawing the group's scattered attention. We can't keep wallowing in what we've lost. We need to focus on what we can rebuild. He scanned the faces, catching a mix of doubt and budding hope. Maplewood is our home. We owe it to ourselves to fight for it. The strong pulse of determination flowed through Tom as he stood beside Emily. Their past within these walls weighed heavily on him. Playgrounds and laughter echoed in his mind, blending with the grim reality of their present. What do you propose? Asked a woman from the back, her voice shaky yet firm. Mark took a deep breath, building momentum. We start with the shelter. We've all seen families struggling. The storm ruined many homes. We can create a temporary shelter right here. Use the supplies we've got in the community center. He waved his arm towards the storage room in the back, where boxes and old furniture lay covered in dust and unfulfilled promise. A murmur ran through the crowd, hesitant but eager. Emily leaned into Tom, her warmth igniting a fire in his belly. We can do this, she whispered. Yeah, he agreed, a flicker of belief lighting up inside him. We all can. Mark continued, we'll need volunteers, lots of hands to make this happen, but together we can. We remember who we are, who we once were. Friends, family, neighbors. We've got history, we can draw on that to bring hope back to Maplewood. Tom could see it now, families coming together, neighbors picking each other up. The sound of laughter didn't feel so distant anymore. They could change everything if they worked together. After a few moments of hopeful silence, a voice rang out. "Count me in." A young man, with messy hair and a hopeful grin, stood up. "Me too," chimed in another voice, then another, until a chorus of affirmations filled the room. Tom's heart raced. He felt the weight of doubt lift. Emily squeezed Tom's hand, and he looked down at her, his heart swelling. It was that connection, the very thing the storm tried to snuff out. They were not just resurrecting a building, they were reigniting a spirit, a community. As ideas for supplies and logistics began swirling in the air, he realized he had to voice his own part. "I can help organize," Tom said, rising to the challenge. The thought had him soaring. For the first time in months, he felt the call of purpose. Minutes turned into hours as they planned. Ideas bounced back and forth like an energetic game of catch, voices growing louder, tempers flaring, but always returning to that common goal. The storm outside faded into a distant memory, eclipsed by the emerging light inside the center, but just as momentum reached its zenith, a loud crash interrupted. Glass shattered, and a gust of wind ripped through the door, revealing a terrified group of people soaked to the bone. It was clear the storm was far from over. Tom's heart dropped as he witnessed the struggle etched on their faces. What the hell had happened outside? He turned to Emily, searching her eyes for answers. Could they possibly help even more? Behind them, the storm roared back to life, and the real challenge lay ahead. Would they maintain the strength they had found today, or would they crumble under the weight of what was to come? Tom's heart raced as he stepped forward, ready to help, but hesitation gripped the crowd. A mingling of shock and concern clouded their faces. The storm had battered Maplewood, but there was palpable fear about what this latest group of drenched survivors represented. "Let them in," shouted Mark, voice steady as he motioned toward the newcomers. "We have to help." The door swung wide, and a rush of cold air filled the room. The drenched figures stumbled inside, dragging with them the weight of desperation. A frail woman clutched a young child against her chest, her eyes wide with terror. A teenager, shaking, helped another older gentleman who looked completely drained. Tom stepped closer, instinctively reaching out for the child, who seemed both terrified and confused. The little girl glanced up, her big brown eyes reflecting both cold fear and a flicker of trust. "It's all right. You're safe now," he reassured gently, taking quick stock of their situation. Emily was at his side, already offering her warmth, her hands resting on the woman's arm. "We have a shelter set up," Emily said softly, her voice wrapping around the visitors like a comforting blanket. "You can stay here until the storm passes." In that moment, hope swelled within the room, a flicker of light breaking through the storm outside. Tom glanced at Mark, who observed the unfolding scene with a resolute expression. "Let us get blankets and some warm drinks," Mark shouted, his urgency infectious. "Team up, folks, quick." As people rushed into action, Tom felt the world shift yet again. The energy in the room soared, replacing previous doubts with action's electrifying buzz. Conversations blended with the rush of movements as tables were pushed together to create makeshift beds and chairs were pulled from the corners. The young man who had first volunteered now led a group into the storage room. "We need to check what we have." "Right." Tom called after him, determination fueling his steps. He jogged into the back with the others, digging through dusty boxes packed away for too long. "Over here." One volunteer shouted as they unearthed blankets, old and faded but still soft. They wouldn't be perfect, but they could be a start. He was pulling out a stack when the woman with the child approached him. Her cheeks were streaked with rain, her clothing soaked through. "Thank you," she whispered, vulnerability threading through her voice. He offered his best smile, "We're all in this together." Tom felt a wave of compassion crash over him. It was a small gesture, but it held so much weight. They were moving forward, and in that moment of connection, he found purpose beyond his own hurt. He silently vowed to breathe life back into their community. Outside, the storm raged on, but within the battered walls of the community center, something extraordinary began to unfold. Laughter mixed with quiet conversation as more volunteers arrived with hot food and drinks. Everyone had rolled up their sleeves, ready to do whatever it took. Just then, a loud thud echoed from outside, followed by the desperate cries of more voices. The collective joy turned into a collective gasp. "There's more!" Someone shouted, and Tom felt the weight of his new reality settle upon him. The community he had hoped to rebuild was barely holding together against the storm's fury. Would their hope withstand what came next, or would it shatter beneath the weight of despair? As the door swung open again, revealing what lay beyond, Tom's heart raced. Would they be ready to face whatever storm was about to thrive? Would they stand tall and united, or would they falter? The door creaked wider, and Tom's breath hitched as he caught sight of shadows crowding the threshold. The wind blew in with a sharp chill, carrying an electric tension that wrapped around the newcomers as they entered. A frail old man leaned heavily on a crutch, while another couple followed, supporting an injured woman whose leg was wrapped in makeshift bandages. "Help! Please!" The old man's voice cracked, desperation coating his words. Tom's instincts kicked in. He rushed forward, offering a steadying arm to the old man. "You're all right, sir. We've got you." Mark and Emily joined him, their expressions tightening with concern. "We need to help them. Get the medical supplies from the back." Mark's voice cut through the chaos, rallying the remaining volunteers with the urgency of their situation. "Over here!" Emily shouted, redirecting people as they shuffled the new arrivals into the warmth of the community center. Tom caught a glimpse of the injured woman, a young mother with panic etched across her face as she cradled a whimpering baby. The moment their eyes locked, Tom felt a surge of empathy wash over him. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Sarah," she replied, her voice trembling. "They were lost in the storm. I don't know where they are." Tears sprang to her eyes, but despite her fear, there was a flicker of hope. "Let us focus on what we can do now. We'll find them," Tom promised, driven by a mixture of dread and resolve. He glanced over at Emily, who was already tending to the elderly couple. It was like the entire center had transformed into a sanctuary, each person contributing whatever they could. As time passed, the sounds of busy hands filled the room. Conversations mingled with soft cries and muffled laughter, a bizarre harmony against the backdrop of the raging storm outside. Tom worked side by side with the volunteers, stitching together a patchwork of support and safety, when suddenly, a young girl emerged from among the visitors. "I saw them. I saw the other kids." Her eyes glistened with determination, bringing the room to an abrupt halt. Silence fell as if time itself paused, allowing her words to sink in. Where did you see them?" Tom asked, kneeling to meet her gaze. "The big tree. They were there." Hope flared brightly in his chest. "Okay. We need to organize a search team. Who's with me?" Hands shot up. Even in that moment, amidst their own trials, volunteers sprang into action, fueled by a mix of compassion and solidarity. The stakes elevated. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about bringing hope back to those left adrift. "Remember," Tom said, trying to instill calm amidst the rising urgency, "stay close, and don't wander too far. We're stronger together." As the group assembled, he caught Sarah's gaze again. "We'll find them, I promise," he assured her. But just as they turned to head back out, the whole building shuddered with a fierce gust of wind, rattling the windows as if the storm itself were shaking the walls in protest. Outside, moments turned into eerie stillness, and a collective unease seeped into the hearts of everyone present. "Did you hear that?" someone whispered. The air was thick with apprehension. A chill ran down Tom's spine, echoing the fear that lingered beyond the doors. Was it the storm or something more sinister lurking in the shadows? As he stepped toward the entrance, the lingering question hung heavy in the air: what awaited them outside, and would they find the strength to face it together? Stepping out into the storm felt like diving into the heart of chaos. The howling wind grabbed at Tom's clothes, tugging him back as if it were alive, trying to keep him from leaving the safety of the community center. But he couldn't falter now, not when so many depended on him. He could see the urgency etched on the faces around him as the search party gathered, heads nodding with determination even under their layers of fear. "Okay, listen up," Tom shouted over the wind. "We're heading for the big tree. Stay close, keep your eyes peeled, and never leave your partner. We won't risk anyone getting lost." As they moved cautiously into the storm, the cold bit deep. Whiteouts created swirling walls of snow, limiting visibility to mere feet. Tom felt the vibrancy of life in the community center drift away with each step. He glanced back to where Sarah stood, her eyes bright with hope as she touched the shoulder of the old man and whispered something to him. Though she was vulnerable, she seemed to draw strength from the others. They were all clinging to that flicker of hope, ready to give everything to find the lost children. With every stride, Tom's heart raced. Memories rushed through his mind, the laughter of his own daughter, the stories she shared after school, the warmth of her small hand in his. He pushed away the fear creeping in. "Okay," he murmured to himself, "you can do this." Moments later, they reached the park where the massive oak tree stood as a sentinel against the storm, its gnarled branches reaching out like welcoming arms. Wind howled through the leaves, a ghostly echo that made every sound eerie. As they reconnoitered the area, a nagging fear whispered over the howling wind, what if they were too late? "Try to spread out a little," Tom ordered, his voice commanding enough to be heard. "Shout if you see or hear anything." He caught sight of Mark pushing forward, his frame hunched against the wind. Suddenly, a small voice broke through the howling storm. "Over here." Tom turned quickly, racing toward the sound. His heart thrummed in his chest. When he broke through the swirling snow, he saw Mark kneeling beside a bush. "I found something." The word sunk deep like a stone. Crouching next to him, Tom squinted into the snow, and before he could process it, he saw it, a small backpack, drenched and muddy, half buried in the snow. "Is this one of theirs?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Yeah, it must be," Mark exclaimed, worry flooding his features. He fished out a scrap of fabric, unmistakably colored with the emblem of a children's place. This was Charlie's, the girl with pigtails. Panic surged through Tom. "We have to keep searching. We can't give up." Just then, a low moan sounded from nearby, barely audible over the storm. Tom froze, his heart racing again. Could it be one of the kids? He exchanged a glance with Mark, the same glimmer of fear and desperation reflected in their eyes. "Did you hear that?" Mark whispered. Tom nodded, tension rising in his chest. They moved towards the sound cautiously, fueled by the hope that perhaps, just perhaps, help was close at hand. But as they approached, the haunting wind seemed to hold its breath, draping a heavy silence over the scene. What would they find lurking in the shadows? And just then, a figure staggered into view, silhouetted against the storm. Tom's breath hitched. No way could the unthinkable be true. The figure stepped forward, barely visible through the swirling snow. Tom's heart raced as he squinted against the frigid gusts. Just then, a flash of light flickered through the darkness. Someone was holding a flashlight, and through the glow, Tom could make out features that sent both relief and heartbreak crashing over him. "Charlie!" he shouted, raw emotion spilling from his lips. The little girl was there, her face pale but her eyes wide with shock, twinkling with fear and resilience. Rocks and snow surrounded her, and she seemed to be cradling something tight against her chest. Mark rushed forward, dropping to his knees beside her. "Charlie! Are you okay?" For a moment, all was lost in the howling wind, as Tom watched and listened. The urgency kept slicing through him like the icy air. They had to save her from this storm. Is everyone else with you?" Tom asked, tension tightening around his throat. Her trembling lips parted, but no sound came forth, at first a silent plea that pierced through the storm. Charlie's eyes darted behind her, and she shook her head, her small hands clutching a bundle tightly. "It's just me," she finally managed to say, tears mingling with the snow on her cheeks. "I lost them. I tried to keep them close." Tom felt a surge of panic. "Where are the others? Where are your friends?" But all he received was a defeated silence, rippling with fear. The wind howled louder, drowning out their voices. Conscious of the time slipping, he turned to Mark. "Stay with her. I'll look around." "Tom, wait!" Mark shouted, desperation in his voice. But Tom was already moving, every instinct driving him deeper into the storm. The path ahead grew darker and more ominous, the shadows of the tree casting a maze of confusion. Thoughts of the lost children filled his mind like a haunting melody that he called out, projecting his voice with a strength he didn't feel. "Listen. If anyone can hear me, respond. We're looking for you." His voice was a lifeline thrown into the void, desperately hoping it would reach them. Pushing through the swirling snow, Tom pressed on. The biting wind clawed at him relentlessly, but he fought against it. He could feel something deep inside him, a flicker of courage, a desperate need to hold on to hope against the encroaching darkness. "Please," he whispered, almost to himself, "not now." In that chilling moment, he stopped by a mound that awkwardly broke the surface of the snow, the tip of something distinctly human-like barely peeking through. With a racing heart, he knelt and began to dig, fearing for the worst but praying for the best. As the snow fell away, his hands found soft, warm gloves, a small child's jacket underneath, and a whiff of something familiar. "Oh no!" The word slipped from his throat, a groan of despair, but then, a faint sound caught his attention, almost muffled by the shushing snowflakes. A whimper. Or a call. Either way, it made his heart race, pulling him in that direction like a magnet. Just moments later, he stumbled upon a couple of figures huddled together, shivering but clearly alive. Relief washed over him like sunlight after a storm. "There you are!" Tom shouted, his voice a mixture of joy and anxiety. "Are you hurt?" The children looked up, eyes big with uncertainty. "Tom!" One of them squeaked, recognition flashing in his gaze. "Let us get you out of here," Tom urged, voice steadying with certainty. But as they turned to head back to Charlie, an eerie howl sliced through the shrieking wind, an unsettling noise that made Tom's hair stand on end. From somewhere deep in the storm, a shadow loomed, larger and more terrifying than before. "We have to hurry!" Tom yelled, urgency tightening his chest. What had they awakened, and what was waiting for them in the icy shadows? Tom swung back around, urgency coursing through him as he led the trembling children away from the growing darkness that seemed to swallow the light around them. It felt as though the storm was alive, breathing down his neck, taunting them with every gust of wind that howled like a banshee. "Stay close. Hold hands," he commanded, glancing over his shoulder to ensure the children followed. The last thing he could afford was for anyone to get lost again. The howling wind seemed to mock him, swirling snow in a blinding dance, but he kept moving forward, spurred on by the nagging feeling that time was slipping away. "Where's Charlie?" One of the kids, a boy with wide eyes, gasped. "Just ahead," Tom replied, forcing hope into his tone. But inside, he fought a rising tide of dread. Had he made the right choice by leaving her behind? What if more children were still out there, cold and alone? His heart pounded as he led the way back, trusting their reunited path would be clear. But every step felt heavier, the snow beneath him plotting against his resolve. When they finally reached Charlie, Tom found her still huddled, arms wrapped tightly around something small and fragile. As soon as she spotted the children, her eyes lit up with a flicker of relief, a brief oasis in the raging storm. "Tom! They're okay!" she exclaimed, her voice lifting like sunlight beneath the dark clouds. "Thank goodness," he said, breathless. "Let us stick together and get out of here." But just as he turned to lead them, that howling sound pierced the air again, a chilling chorus that rattled the trees and sent a wave of panic coursing through the children. Tom felt the fear radiate from them, fear that mirrored the icy grip squeezing his own heart. "Run!" he shouted, and with that command, they tore off together into the white chaos, heartbeats pounding, every breath coming out like little clouds of desperation. The snow whipped at their faces, transforming their surroundings into a white nightmare. Tom risked a glance back. But there was nothing. Just darkness, pulsing shadows behind them. "Is it chasing us?" Charlie whimpered, struggling to keep pace. Tom gritted his teeth. "I don't know. Just keep going." Suddenly, one of the smaller children stumbled, falling into the snow with a thud. In an instant, Tom stopped and grabbed the boy's hand, pulling him back up. "You all right?" The boy nodded, but his teeth chattered, eyes wide with fear. Without feeling, Tom fastened an arm around Charlie and the boy, trying to shield them from the cold. "We're almost there," he urged, scanning the horizon, desperate for any hint of safety. As they pressed on, Tom spotted a faint glow flickering in the distance. "Look!" he shouted, hope flooding his voice. "A cabin!" But before they could move, that low, growling sound emerged again, closer this time. It vibrated through his bones, sending chills down his spine. Whatever was out there was stalking them, and it was hungry. "Faster!" he yelled, pushing himself and the kids forward, feeling their little hands shaking in his grip. With the cabin just ahead, there was no time to lose. Tom could almost feel the warmth radiating from the walls. Freedom was so close, and yet, the fear that gripped him was suffocating. They were on the edge of salvation, but with the shadow looming behind them, he knew they had to make a choice. Inside might offer shelter. But what if they weren't safe there either? "Tom!" Charlie cried, pulling him sharply back to reality. "What do we do?" "Just trust me," he shouted, urgency tightening his voice. As they sprinted toward the flickering light, dread coiled in his stomach. Would they make it? And what awaited them inside? The answer hung heavily in the air as the wind howled, filled with secrets that only the storm could know. Tom's heart raced as the cabin loomed larger, its pale glow pulsating like a beacon in the storm. Snow blasted against them, stinging their cheeks, but he pushed forward, driven by the instinct to protect. Just a few more steps and they would be safe, or so he hoped. "Get ready," he urged, feeling the weight of the children's breaths like tiny hammers against the cold. As they barreled through the door, the warmth enveloped them like a long-lost embrace. But that comfort was short-lived. The inside of the cabin was bare, save for a rickety old table and a flickering lantern. Tom's eyes darted around, searching for anything that could shield them from whatever hunted them. "Is it here?" Charlie whispered, petrified. Tom shook his head, but doubt churned in his stomach. They had barely 2 seconds to catch their breath when the low growl slithered into the cabin, echoing off the wooden walls. The sound crawled under his skin, and he pressed the children closer to him, a human shield against the unknown. Panic rose as he moved in front of the kids, his back to them, ready to face whatever nightmare was to come. The shadows danced menacingly in the corners, almost as if they were alive, claws scratching at the door. Tom took a deep breath, willing himself to be the stalwart protector. "Listen," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt, "if it comes in here, we need to find a way to escape." "But where will we go?" the boy he had saved stammered, his voice faint and trembling. Tom began, the harsh growl growing louder, drowning him in fear. He cast a glance around the cabin, where a rusted knife lay atop the table. Not much, but it was better than nothing. He grabbed it, gripping the handle tightly, its cool metal reminding him of the stakes. Just then, a thump resonated at the door. The children's eyes widened, glimmering with near disbelief. Tom's hold tightened around the knife, his knuckles going white. He would stand firm. He had to. "Stay behind me," he told them. The sound came again, this time accompanied by the scratching of something large and powerful against the wooden door. Tom's mind raced. Should they bolt for the back? But running might just as easily lead them into the open jaws of whatever lay outside. "Tom, I can't," Charlie whimpered, fear woven through her words. I know," he murmured, guilt clawing at his heart. He couldn't show fear, not now. "Just hold on to me tight." The door buckled, splintering wood, sending shards ricocheting across the room. He braced himself for whatever would burst through. The moment felt like an eternity, each beat of his heart thunderous and heavy against the backdrop of the storm. Just then, the door flew open. Tom's stomach dropped as a dark figure loomed in the doorway, silhouetted by the swirling snow. Panic nearly overtook him. But amid all that dread, he felt something else, a strange spark. An ember of courage ignited within him, pushing back the tide of despair. "Run!" he yelled, adrenaline surging. The children stumbled, caught off guard but moving instinctively. He had to hope they could find an escape behind him. With a single glance, he saw that the figure wasn't just a shadow, it was real, a hulking mass cloaked in darkness, blocking all light behind it. Tom's breath caught in his throat, every instinct screaming at him to protect those children at all costs. "Tom!" Charlie's voice broke through the chaos, trembling yet hopeful. What if we fight back? Could they?" The thought tumbled in his mind as he backed toward the window, weighing their odds against the beast rising from the storm. They would either find their freedom or face their fears head-on. He turned toward the children, ready for whatever came next. The flickering lantern dimmed, plunging the cabin into near darkness. "Get ready," he whispered. Just then, he realized that sometimes, hope could shine brightest when surrounded by shadows. Would it be enough to save them? That question hung heavy in the air as they prepared for the confrontation, and as the darkness breathed deeper, preparing to lunge, Tom's resolve hardened. The answer would reveal itself in the heart of the storm. The air in the cabin was electric, charged with the tension of impending confrontation. Tom felt the strong pull of fear, but the sound of the children's breaths reminded him of what was at stake. He glanced back at Charlie and the boy, whose wide eyes reflected confusion and determination. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for each other. "Whatever happens," he said, his voice steady but soft, "we stick together. We'll face this as a team." The words were as much a promise to himself as they were to the children. Then, the door flew open with a deafening bang, revealing the dark figure that had haunted them. It stepped into the cabin, blocking the light, its massive form casting an ominous shadow over them all. The growl reverberated through Tom's bones, but he couldn't let panic swallow him whole. Instead, he tightened his grip on the rusted knife, raising it not just as a weapon, but as a symbol of their collective defiance. "Now!" he shouted, his voice strong, commanding. "We move." The children bolted, scrambling towards the small kitchen at the back, where a window offered an escape route. Tom positioned himself between them and the impending danger. The creature lunged, its eyes glinting from the dark, revealing jagged teeth that seemed to glisten from some abyss. In that moment, everything slowed. Time felt elastic, stretching into a memory of all he loved: his sister, the echoes of laughter in Maplewood, the community he was determined to save. With adrenaline coursing through him, Tom leapt. He swung the knife, not with the intention of violence, but with everything he had: hope, courage, and love for the children who depended on him. As the blade struck against the creature's shoulder, a howl erupted from its throat, shaking the very walls around them. "Keep going!" he yelled to the children, who were already inching toward the window. In another instant, the creature was on him, swiping a heavy paw against Tom, sending him to the ground. Pain shot through him, but he wouldn't relent. The vision of their home of Maplewood flashed through his mind. The children wouldn't give up. "Not now!" Charlie, with a new light in her eye, sprang back, grabbing the knife with determination. "I can help," she said, her small voice suddenly full of strength. "Charlie, no!" screamed Tom, but it was too late. She lunged forward, plunging the knife into the creature's side with a ferocity that rivaled fear itself. The beast staggered back, giving Tom just enough time to grab Charlie and the boy, ushering them toward the window. The moment felt surreal, frozen as they climbed through the narrow opening, inching past sharp shards of glass. The storm bit at their faces, but freedom was so close. Just as he felt the last child slip through, the creature howled behind them, rage filling the space as they tumbled out into the wild, frozen chaos. They hit the ground hard, the cold snow enveloping them. Tom instinctively shielded the children, gripping them tightly against him. The world around them was a whirlwind of white, but there just off to the side he spotted a figure materializing through the storm. Mark. Tom's voice broke through the raging wind, relief flooding him as he recognized the familiar face. Mark was battling the storm himself, but he was there, alive, pushing against the elements. Tom. Charlie. Mark shouted, his eyes widening. Are you all right? Tom sprang to his feet, urging the children up. We need to get to the community center. Now. Together, the makeshift group fought against the storm, each step a battle. The wind howled around them as they dashed through the snow, determination guiding their feet. Each child held tight to Tom's hands, their small grips a fierce reminder of his purpose. As they neared the community center, the familiar facade appeared like a lighthouse through the tempest. Hope surged within him. The door swung open, revealing familiar faces, the town coming together, just as they had decided to do. Tom had ignited a spark. They would not back down against despair. There, in the heart of the chaos, was Emily. She rushed toward him, her face a mixture of relief and concern. You found them. Her voice burst with joy as the children rushed into her embrace. For a moment, they all breathed in together, the air thick with unity and love. Everyone's here, she whispered, a soft smile breaking through the worry. We've created a shelter. We're ready to face this storm together. In moments, the community rallied around Tom, each familiar face a source of strength that filled him with resolve. They banded together, forming a human line against the uncertainty, ready to support one another. And finally, with laughter rising above the howling wind, they began stacking supplies, pulling blankets, and reigniting the warmth that had flickered out for so long in Maplewood. Tom felt tears stinging his eyes, a strange mix of relief and pride swelling in his heart. They had faced the storm, and they would continue to rebuild. Not just the walls of their homes, but the very spirit of their community. As the storm raged outside, they found shelter in one another. Hope, like a raging fire, filled the center of that community. It was a light that would never be extinguished again. Together, they would mend what was broken. This is not the end, this is just the beginning. Don't wait. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you won't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to fuel our journey and feed the algorithm with your support. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this inspiring ending. Let us share the love that binds us, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Together we can ignite the flames of hope.